Tyme Glitch, Book 2. Uncle Morton, Charlie's father's oldest brother, drove up the farm's long driveway in a new fancy car. Now keep in mind, not many people had new fancy cars back then. The farm had a solid truck that had a flatbed on it, because most folk around here use a truck mostly for taking their crops to the market. Now Uncle Morton was from Detroit, Michigan, and all we knew about him was that he came into some money some time back. With his new wealth, he liked to travel, to go places he had heard about, and then even to visit some of his family along the way. On this hot, muggy, sunny afternoon, Uncle Morton had came to visit the Wilson farm in Pottersdale, Tennessee. And it was quite a long drive, he had told them. Charlie watched from the barn as his younger brothers ran beside the car as it crept up the dirt road leading to the main house. Once the car was parked, the boys asked if they could get in and look around. With a chuckle, Uncle Morton opened up the doors and let the exploring begin. The boys were like ants, crawling all over the car from front to back. Now, Charlie didn't waste a lot of time falling all over that car. He had too many chores to do to finish before dark. Charlie wanted to finish them up because he had plans to sneak off to see his girlfriend Daisy down by the creek. It's not hard to notice Charlie. He was a medium build, about 6 feet tall and lanky. His brown hair and brown eyes. His baby face held a smile and a joy that could change a room. Most nights after the chores were done, the family would gather up on the porch and break out the musical instruments. Singing and playing would ring all through the hills, through the valley. All the children learned to play different instruments and enjoyed their time together each evening. But not tonight, Charlie thought. His mind was holding his girl and talking the night away like they usually did. Uncle Morton and his visit allowed Charlie a chance to sneak away without getting noticed. Charlie stood back and heard Uncle Morton talk like a car salesman, explaining the automobile that he drove up in. Uncle Morton was a showman, though, and he liked to act it all out. When he was leaning on his cane, he stood like a ringmaster at the big top show that came through town last summer. The family all gathered around the car and listened like they were tuned into their favorite radio station. He started out with, "A 1948 Ford Motor Company produced this fine vehicle. It was a 1948 Ford Custom Deluxe convertible." He proudly showed his knowledge of the car. Ford had made big updates from the 1942 model in preparation for the time surrounding World War II. We all knew that Uncle Morton hadn't served in any military or didn't even plan to fight in any war. He went on to tell that in 1941 design would continue and then would be aborted the year of 1942 because of the war. And then it got restarted back up after 1946 and was produced until 1948. And then there was more modern Fords that were built after that. The car industry was changing, and so was the series of cars. It evolved and changed considerably. Now, all this information had the boys' attention. They just was gobbling it all up. The front fenders came in 3 pieces. Wow. The theory being that if small damages happened, it could be replaced easily. During the year, it evolved into a 2-piece with the lower front and back sections being joined together. The hood riser changed, and the early ones being the same as the 1940s Fords, and it changed during the year to a better version. This 1942 model year lasted for only 4 months before the government ordered a halt to all civilian automobile productions in February 10th of 1942. The younger boys asked how long ago that was, and Peter, being the second oldest, told them that it was 6 years ago. Now, Peter was 15, and he was smart for his age and didn't try to boast or really show off. But you could just tell. You knew it. Now, he could have added that the World War had ended in 1945. Now, Peter and Charlie kept the family up on current events and things going around in the world because they were older and they knew things they were out and about. In the whole wide world, it seemed that one leader would go to war over something or another. In 1948, the United States was experiencing a number of significant events and developments. One of the most notable events was the presidential election that year. The incumbent president, Harry S. Truman, he was a Democrat. He won a surprising victory against the Republican candidate, Thomas E. Dewey. This election is famous for the insurrection Dewey defeats Truman headline that was published by the Chicago Tribune. The papers can't even be trusted, boys thought. Good thing that the government is trustworthy, though. Now, Peter's history teacher told them about a plan to help rebuild Europe after World War II. The United States continued its involvement in post-war Europe throughout what is called the Marshall Plan. Now, this plan provided economic aid to the Western European countries that were recovering from the devastation of the war. Now, Paul would say, why are we sending money overseas to help them out when we got needs here in America as well? Another thing, that there's some large cities facing a thing called people's rights. The civil rights movement gained momentum in the late 1940s. In 1948, President Truman issued an executive order desecrating the armed forces, making a significant step towards civil rights reform. Most of the white people were mad about it. Most of the black people were happy about it. To some, it didn't change one thing or another, or at least around here it didn't. It didn't matter to Peter and Charlie because they were raised with that all children were created in God's image. So we need to love each other no matter what the skin color is. So that's how we do it here in our town, or at least on our farm for sure. At harvest time, Paul would go get help for those who were willing to work. Black, white, brown, it didn't really matter to him, and he paid them all the same. He just needed the crops in, and it was too much for just the family themselves to do it. Now, this next event, Mom and Pa stopped what they were doing and gathered together and said a prayer of protection over the family and the farm. Some called it a Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union was intensifying. They thought that it had a lot to do with how cold it was in Russia. And it seems an event that happened just this week they heard about. The Berlin blockade and airlift occurred, where a Soviet Union blockade in West Berlin, leading to a mass airlift of supplies to the Western allies of that city. Well, at church, Daisy's dad told him the news that made him happy. It was about God's people, he said. The state of Israel was officially established, leading to the Arab-Israel War. Now, the pastor said Israel was God's land. This even had far-reaching consequences over all the Middle East, with the end of the World War II contributing to a significant increase in birth rates in the United States, leading to the baby boom era, which lasted for several years. With the men coming back from war, they wanted to create life instead of taking lives. In class, it was told about the tension between the countries of North and South Korea were escalating. There was talk about that might be the next big war. Now, Charlie loved baseball, and he listened to it all the time on the radio. His team was the Cleveland Indians, and they'd won the World Series. Kids at school would brag about staying up all night watching TV, like shows of Ed Sullivan and the Milton Berle Show. Well, there was no use for a TV on the farm. You stayed too busy doing your chores and farming, and once you got that done, it was time to eat, sing, and get some shut-eye, because the morning came early and quick most of the time. Now, Peter, in a daze, thinking about all that other stuff, just realized that Uncle Morton was still talking about his car. He stopped all his recalling and gave Uncle Morton a listen. It seemed that Uncle Morton knew a guy that knew a guy that knew a guy that could get him his car at a discount. And being on the spot to pay with cash, it was a done deal. A car like this with a flathead V8 engine gave it all the power that he needed, and more than that. The exterior was impressive and beautiful. Uncle Morton walked around the car and he pointed out with his walking stick certain parts of the outside of the car. The electric shaver grille, the 3-part fender for easy repair in case of a mishap. Look, no running boards. Most of the other cars that had running boards, but this one was different. It came in a beautiful color, though. The robin eggs blue was the only color that the car came in. Snappy lines and all the curves were coming of age, and this car was a definition of that design trend. Plenty of chrome trimmings, which would be done away with after the war production. Now, Ford solved this lack of chrome with using silver paint. However, this car had all the chrome, and it appeared all over. On the rocker trim, the mid-fender accent spears, and the belt line spear. The line of the back of the car was nothing short of spectacular, with its long sloping trunted and rear glass on either side of the rear passengers emitting a line that looked like a C. It was ahead of its time in aerodynamics look. All the finishes are excellent, and the body matched the wheels wrapped with wide white and covered the middle of the dog dish caps that were all chrome. if the outside wasn't impressive enough, let's go ahead and look inside and see what happened and how it all looked inside as he opened up the car door. Looking at the interior, we can see the light blue broadcloth with dotted pattern over gray broadcloth over gray carpeting for the door panels. The gray bakelite bezels for all the knobs and the levers, and shiny stuff everywhere. The chairs was a split bench for the front and solid bench for the rear. The chromed Art Deco inspired dash in gray metal and a lot of chrome trimming, and a large steering wheel, a complete circle horn that had the big Ford symbol in the middle. A gray felted headliner that ran to the bottom of the C-pillar near the rear window and the edge around the door panels. Even the trunk was nice finishly covered, and the spare tire and the wheel cover. Now walking up to the front of the hood and opening it, pulling the lever somewhere underneath, pop, you could hear all the wows from the kids. This was Charlie's time to blend into the dusk shadows and head past the barn and down to the dirt road to the meeting tree, their special tree. It was a place that they had their first kiss, and Charlie had carved their initials in that tree and put a heart around it. This was their spot. Daisy would also have to do her chores. Getting away was a lot easier because her dad was the local pastor. Her father would either be in his study preparing for a sermon or off to someone's house to pray for them or whatnot. Her mother was always in the kitchen either cooking or canning or doing something. She can't recall a time when her mother wasn't in the kitchen. Now her walk through the woods took her over 40 minutes to get to the meeting tree, but the joy and love in her heart let her legs float her there. The last thing Charlie heard Uncle Morton say that he rounded the barn was, "It's strange the radio's not working. It stopped playing after they passed that tree down there by the creek." Well, he knew a guy that could look at it when he got back home. But it sure was strange that a radio in a new car didn't work. And changing the subject to focus on other parts of the car, he went on. As Charlie came near their tree, though, he looked around for Daisy, but she wasn't there. He called out her name, and silence answered. Or maybe she couldn't come tonight. Or what if her father found out about their secret love? All the times that they'd spent together at school and church and here at their tree. All these things ran through his mind. Well, he thought, if her dad did find out about them, then he would have to know that they were going to get married soon. That he loved Daisy, and she loved him. It didn't matter that they were young. Why, he even had a cousin who got married at 13 to her 19-year-old cousin. Well, at least he and Daisy wasn't kin. That made Charlie let out a chuckle and a snort. At the time, Charlie seen her white dress glowing through the trees coming down the hill towards him. What a beautiful woman. Daisy wasn't the tallest of ladies, being just over 5 feet tall, so standing next to Charlie, she had to look up to him. Well, most people did, even most adults. Charlie couldn't wait for her at that tree, so he hurried up the hill to meet her. Well, as soon as she seen him coming, her eyes teared up with joy. This was her man. I'm going to marry him, she thought. As they met, they embraced each other with a hug that made them one. It had been 4 days since they had met, and it felt like an eternity. Daisy couldn't sneak away from her father, who was overprotective too often. Her family wanted Daisy to marry into the church life. Maybe she would fall in love with a young pastor or a strong church leader in the group. In Daisy's mind, she already knew who her forever love was. It was Charlie Wilson, her man. They walked hand in hand down to the special spot. Under that tree, they shared so much with each other. Charlie never had someone he could tell his fears of drowning to, or how he enjoyed gathering chicken eggs. It seemed silly to other people, but Daisy understood. Daisy told him that she didn't like watermelon and hated spiders, snakes, and skunks, due to her dog getting sprayed by a skunk when she was younger. Boy, did he stink, and it lasted a long time. Now they could talk and listen to each other for hours. This would happen when they got together. Hours would just fly by, and as the night grew, so did their love. The spot under the tree seemed to soak all their special connection up. Like it was storing up energy, and a spot mostly glowed with the genuine love that it returned back to them under that special tree. As much as both of them hated to part, they had to get back before sunrise. Charlie would stand and watch Daisy walk up the hill and off out of sight. One day he vowed that they would never have to part again. Back at the farm, Charlie would find Uncle Morton sitting on the front porch when he got back from their special visit. Uncle Morton could see the glow and the pep in that boy's step that someone was in love. He should know because, as of to date, Uncle Morton had been married 3 times and was now looking for number 4. "Sit down here, young man, and tell me about her," Uncle Morton would say. "How did he know?" Charlie said. "Well, adults just know things, guess." Like a flood water breaking in the dam, Charlie spilled it all, almost in relief to have someone that he could tell, telling it all and at times more than he should share. Charlie talked and it seemed all into one long sentence. Uncle Morton sat there with his attention on his young nephew. Uncle Morton sat for a moment before he responded to Charlie. The wisdom of failed marriages and from all the struggles in his life. Charlie tried to learn all that he could from his uncle, and some of what he was said didn't make a lot of sense at the time, but it would come back to him later in his life. Uncle Morton would share with Charlie that one of the main reasons that he came to the farm to see them was that he was dying. Uncle Morton had received the diagnosis of cancer. It was a serious and life-threatening that required immediate medical care and treatment. He would require surgery, a thing called chemotherapy or radiation therapy, which was a specialized treatment. Charlie didn't know anything about cancer or even how it was treated. Uncle Morton told him that most hospitals would just cut you open and cut out the cancer and hope that it was gone. But this fancy new doctor that he was seeing, talked about experimental treatment, chemotherapy pills. Now this was new and it would be used to further the care against cancer. So he would be a test study on it. If all that failed, then they would go ahead and do surgery. Uncle Morton, if he was to have surgery, it would be back in his hometown of Detroit, Michigan. As he shared this with Charlie, tears of regret rolled down his face. Charlie wasn't used to seeing men cry and didn't know how to console him. Uncle Morton told Charlie that he wanted him to come back with him and take care of him while he recovered from this new treatment. That was the reason that he came to the farm. Charlie sat stunned with all the information, and he began to review things over in his head. His family would have to work harder if he left, and his heart reminded him of Daisy. Would he even leave her? With all this hitting him at once, Charlie hugged Uncle Morton and told him that he would have to think about it. With so much on his mind, he wandered off the bed almost in a daze. He heard the soft cry coming from behind him as Uncle Morton dealt with his coming end. That night, Charlie would have many dreams and thoughts, but by morning he knew what he needed to do. Of course, he would go help his Uncle Morton. But he also knew that it was the break that he needed to take Daisy away with him. Rising up before anyone else, even the chickens, he jumps in Uncle Morton's car and he leaves to go tell Daisy. As he gets close to her house, he parks the car out of view and sneaks up to her window. Small knocks on her window so that he wouldn't wake up the parents. After some time, a sleepy, dazed, beautiful woman comes to the window and opens it. She is surprised to see him and almost runs away because she hasn't had any makeup on. He thinks that she is still stunning and almost forgot why he came. He fills her in on all what Uncle Morton had told him, the cancer and the need for someone to go help him recover in Detroit, and that this was their time to run away together. She told him that she didn't know and had to think about it. She told him that if she was going to run away with him, then she would tie a white sash around their tree. This would be a sign to come and pick her up that night that they had planned to leave for Detroit. Charlie leaves her with a mixed emotions and some doubt. He thought that she would be excited at the chance that they could leave right away. The mind of a woman needs to plan out things and have all the answers, it seems. When coming back to the farm, he's met with a morning hustle to get the chores done before school. Charlie jumps right in and gets things done along with his brothers. He finishes with just enough time to grab a sausage biscuit off the table. Now the kitchen table is always having something on there to eat and a glass of fresh milk from old Betsy. Nothing like Mom's cooking for sure. School days seemed to last forever, and what's the use for him even coming today? He already knew that he was leaving. No more school for him. Well, I can bet you guessed why. It was because he got another chance to see and talk to Daisy. At lunch they sat almost in silence, and that had never happened in their relationship. Finally the bell rings for them to return to class, and they have to part. Again, Charlie vows that one day he would never have to leave each other again, holding on to that hope that she would go with him and become his wife. Coming home to the farm, his parents tell him that Uncle Morton filled them in on his condition and the need for Charlie to come to help. Family takes care of family around here, they said, so they encouraged Charlie to do the right thing. The farm would be okay without him for a little while. Charlie goes off to pack and get some things together for his trip, telling his family goodbye for now and loves you all. As Charlie and Uncle Morton leave the farm, things felt a bit off for both of them. Rounding the bend and down the road, heading towards their tree, Charlie had hoped to see that white sash tied around it. But to his amazement, the whole base of the tree was wrapped in so much white strips that you couldn't even see the bark. And coming up on the tree with the white wrapping, the radio came back on. Uncle Morton said, "Well, the ride would have been a lot longer without a radio. Daisy's going to come with us," Charlie told Uncle Morton. And Charlie directs them to go to her place, where they find her standing in the wood line, and she rushes out holding a small suitcase. Charlie joins Daisy in the back seat as they laugh and they cry at the same time. The long ride back to Detroit wasn't long at all. Highway traffic was riddled with various cars and trucks. Some that was new to Charlie and Daisy. They hadn't seen those vehicles before. Detroit had lights that made the city glow at night. It seemed that way from a distance. Charlie and Daisy had never been out of their small town, and this was a shock to see the buildings that were so tall. Many of the places were pointed out of what they were and where they are now by Uncle Morton. This city was growing and being known as Motor City because of all the car factories here. Slowing down on a certain road in a nice neighborhood on the outskirts of town, you could almost see the pride in Uncle Morton as he pointed out his house. Now, it was a different color, with it being a sand color. Sort of looked like a tan to me, or a faded yellow to Daisy. The stone walkway led up to the front porch, and it had 2 columns on either side of the entrance. As they walked along the rows of neatly groomed shrubs and flowers, coming inside, they thought they were in a fancy hotel, or a place that they had taken their shoes off before walking through. Uncle Morton laughed and seen their mouths open with amazement. He told them that he had just completely repaired it after he got his money. Now they all were being tired from their journey and wanted to rest up. This house had so much that they wanted to explore, but the trip overtook their desire to explore. They were tired. Uncle Morton showed them the many bedrooms, and each of them got hit with a pillow. Even though they were to be married soon, they took different rooms, out of respect of how they were raised. The morning was really the afternoon. The sun was beaming through the window and roasting one side of Charlie's face. Down the hall to the kitchen he found Daisy, and she was making coffee for them. Uncle Morton was out back in his mini garden, so Charlie went to join him. The backyard had a patio area big enough for an outdoor gathering. Charlie helped Uncle Morton gather up some of the things out of the garden as they talked about growing, how it grows good and what doesn't. In the backyard was a reasonable size, and even with the small garden, there was a clothesline and a garage where the car was parked. Over the next few weeks, Uncle Morton would have to go and do some errands from time to time. So plans about the doctor visits and all were talked about over the coffee. After a few trips with him to the doctor, painted a grim picture of not having much hope of good results. Cancer was known as a silent killer. Not many people survived it. Uncle Morton was a tough old dude. Things were not easy for Daisy, as she was now homesick and would cry and weep most of the time. As Charlie and Daisy accompanied Uncle Morton to his doctor visits and appointments, Daisy began to miss her hometown and her family more and more. She longed for the familiar sights and sounds of her small community and comfort of her parents' home and support of her close-knit family. Her father might be stern and controlling, but right now she would give anything to hug him and have him tell her that everything was all right. Daisy cherished her time with Charlie and Uncle Morton. With the bustling city of Detroit and the challenges they faced were reminders of the simplicity and the warmth of her former life. She confides in Charlie about her feelings, expressing her homesickness and longing to return to her family. Daisy's homesick becomes a bittersweet undercurrent of their journey. Charlie, understanding her sentiment, comforts Daisy and reassures her that their time in Detroit is only temporary. He promises that once Uncle Morton is stable, they can get married and build a life together. After one really hard chemo day on the way home, Uncle Morton tells them to stop at the courthouse for him. With both of them trying to get him to go home and rest, Uncle Morton demanded that they go in together. So Charlie places Uncle Morton in a wheelchair, which he carried in the trunk. And that's what they had to use to get him to and from the car and all around after these treatments. As they wheeled down the hall directed in a certain door, Uncle Morton had used his connections at the courthouse, and today was the day of his caregivers would be married. He had taken the applications and paid all the fines and fees. The only next step was to stand before the judge and to be married. With shock and excitement, they didn't have time to really be nervous. That would hit them later on, but for now, they were getting married. The judge winked at Uncle Morton and performed the ceremony. When it came to giving them the rings, they didn't have any, but Uncle Morton had thought of everything. He produced 2 rings, and they both fit perfectly. He would tell them later that he had bought those rings even before he made the trip to Pottersdale, Tennessee, and to the family farm, before he even knew that Charlie and Daisy were dating or even in love. That was when the judge declared them husband and wife. Uncle Morton told them that he had a friend who would file the marriage certificate for them. He would get them a copy later, and they would have that to show the world that they were now husband and wife. With all that done, the weight was off of everyone's shoulders. Sorry that you can't go on a honeymoon at this time, but after I'm better, I will help send you someplace special, Uncle Morton said. Back at the house, Uncle Morton was fast asleep on the couch because he had a hard day. This was the opportunity that Charlie and Daisy needed. They were now married, and you know what's next. Off to the bedroom they ran, together hand in hand, giggling all the way. It didn't take long for the clothes to hit the floor, and they were able to make love for the first time. What a special day this was. The hardest day of treatment, the longest hours of waiting in turn, and it turned into the day of remembering. Lying and holding each other in their arms is a moment that would forever be etched into their souls. Thank God for indoor plumbing as they both scurried down the hall to take a shower together. Their first of many showers together as they again explored each other's body and became as one. Hours later, they would make their way back to the living room to find Uncle Morton grinning and smiling. He was happy for them and glad that they could be married and be a witness to sign their marriage license, to give back to them a little bit of joy that they had brought to him. Even though he needed them to help, he also enjoyed their company. He wanted to help them and make them very happy. Daisy headed off to the kitchen to make them some food. For some reason, they had worked up a hearty appetite. That night, they would sit outside on the patio and watch the stars. Daisy thinks of her parents and how they might have wanted to be a part of their marriage, and maybe even her father, doing the ceremony. Lost in thought, he gave Uncle Morton time to tell Charlie tomorrow he needed him to drive him somewhere. Uncle Morton doesn't disclose the details, but insists that it's very important. So the next day, Charlie tells Daisy that she should stay home this time, that they would be right back. She had a bad feeling about it, but her husband, wow, that's cool to say, she said, was always doing what was best for them. This drive led them to a darker part of town. They drove out of the fancy homes into the larger city. The houses turned into barely standing structures and tall apartments-type buildings. Charlie felt the eyes watching them as they progressed down the rougher areas. Uncle Morton pointed to a house on the corner and tells Charlie to park them there and then for him to get out and walk away for a bit. A group of shady characters were nearby. He would honk the horn when he wanted Charlie to come back. Charlie didn't want to, but from the look he got from Uncle Morton, he knew that there was no change in his mind. So Charlie was walking past some guys standing and talking next to a mailbox. They were passing a cigarette back and forth and coughing and laughing at nothing. That cigarette smelt funny, not like the fresh-cut tobacco roll that he had back home on the farm. And they asked him if he wanted to hit. Charlie thanked them but refused. Just in time, he heard a familiar horn blast from Uncle Morton, and he hurried back to the car. He couldn't wait to get back to Daisy and out of that part of town. It was like a dark cloud all over the place, and it made him really uneasy. What a welcome sign to see Uncle Morton's house. He knew that just holding Daisy would bring the emotions back to earth. Charlie didn't tell Daisy about the place that they was in the city and the mysteries that were dark, and he didn't want to be part of them. The incident leaves Charlie feeling conflicted and concerned about the path that he's inadvertently been drawn into. He wanted to talk with Uncle Morton about this, but it never felt like a good time to do it with him watching him take his cancer treatments. Thankfully, Charlie only drove once to that part of town, and Uncle Morton hadn't asked him to go back either. One cold and gloomy morning, Charlie and Daisy was woke up by a loud boom and what sounded like the front door being broken down by something. Charlie comes down the hall with a bat in his hand for protection, and he's met in the living room full of police officers and more coming in through that broken door. What's this? What in the world's going on? And he noticed that they already had Uncle Morton in handcuffs and leading him out that door. Without notice, Charlie is tackled to the floor, and now he's in handcuffs. His mind's trying to answer all this what's going on mess. The police lead him out and put him in the back of a police car. As he looks up from the back seat, he notices Daisy is handcuffed too and being put in a different police car. In front of him, the lead car, sits Uncle Morton. Charlie's not really liking the big city at all. It was at this point in his mind he was thinking that it was okay with Daisy. They would probably return back to their Pottersdale, Tennessee home and find a way to live it out there. Yes, he would have to face her father and her mother. You better bet that they're not really happy with him at the moment. But at this time, he would welcome that issue over his current state. In the first car with Uncle Morton, it pulls away, and Charlie would have liked to have a chance to talk to him before they took him away. But a large policeman opens up the back door and orders Charlie to get out. They walk up behind him to the house and they grill him about different things to see what Charlie knew about Uncle Morton's doings. After sharing that he and his wife just came to help care for his uncle during his cancer treatments, the detective let him go. I guess at the time they were questioning Daisy, and her story and events matched Charlie's. The detective handed them a card with his information on it and told them not to leave town, that they might be needed to meet again. "Oh, sure, Bob. We'll be right here if you need us," thought Charlie. While Charlie was talking to the last police officer that was leaving the house, Daisy was already in the bedroom packing their suitcase. This event was not what they were used to, and they longed for the peace and quiet life of a small town. Charlie joins her in the packing and starts taking stuff out to the garage to load into the car. And on the front seat was an envelope with his and Daisy's name on it. Tearing it open, he finds the title to the car and some cash. His uncle might have thought something bad was going to happen, and that it was coming, and transferred the car into Charlie's name. And true to his promise to help them any way that he could, he gifted them with a few $1,000s to get them started in a new life, not here. His uncle had loved him, and he loved his uncle, and it grew more than it already has. Charlie wasn't sure what Uncle Morton had done or what he was into. All he knew was that now was the time to get his wife and him away from Detroit. The last of the note read, "The car is special, and one day you will know what I'm talking about. Love you, Uncle Morton." With his envelope stuffed in one of the suitcases and the cash in his pocket, he pulls out of the garage and heads up next to the house for one last time. He is met by Daisy, who had taken the time to make them both sandwiches and peanut butter and jelly for the road. "God, I love her," he thinks to himself. With the car loaded with all that they could pack in, they say goodbye to the big city and all the corruption that it held. Charlie and Daisy were going to leave this place behind. This wasn't for them, and they had to inquire about Uncle Morton later. Now the long trip home, back to the farm life, was Anne facing her father. It was a good thing, sort of, that all this mess happened early, because that allowed them the most daylight to drive home away from there. Traffic seemed heavier than their drive up. More cars and more trucks on the road this time of year. Guess it was more people leaving the cold and going to the warmer climate. They had to stop at a state border to get out and hug the sign that said, "Welcome to Tennessee." It sure was good to be back home. Well, closer anyways. Charlie knew that the cash they had could rent them someplace, but he wanted a place of their own. He would first look for land and then build, or maybe he could find a place that would let him work to own. His last thought was that he could ask his parents if he could build a place on the farm, something small and cozy that him and his new wife could have as their own. As he pulled up close to the road that led to his parents' house, he stopped the car. Looking over at Daisy, she lay asleep, leaning on the passenger side door. He wanted her to be a part of their decision. With a gentle shake and saying her name softly, not to scare her, he wanted just to wake her. Daisy slowly raised up and hugged him from the side. "We made it back to my family farm," and she said, "Thank you for getting us away from the big city and all that stuff. This is where we need to be, and hopefully raise a family." She shocked herself because this was the first time that she had even said it out loud. Tearing up with joy, Charlie joined in the excitement of how many kids that they should have and what each of them might look like. Oh, this is the Daisy that he fell in love with, and that he hadn't realized that she was different in the big city. He wanted this Daisy, when with the sweetest of kisses, told her about wanting to build a home for them. Before he could tell her different ways he could do it, she said, "We need to build it next to our tree." Oh, he loved her so much, and that would make things like this happen. To be honest, he liked that thought too. Up the road they went, and as they come up to the creek by their tree, they stopped, and they both got out. This place felt perfect. The spot in the special place would be a wonderful spot for a home, a place to raise a family. As they walked around, they could hear the car radio. Strange, because the car was even off. Maybe it was that they were tired and those fancy cars do fancy things at times. Now, there's not a lot of land that they could build on, so the place would have to be small, but it's okay. They didn't need anything big anyway, not until they started having babies. After sharing their idea of where and how to build the house, they went on to venture up to the main house. It was late in the night, so they parked near the barn and grabbed some blankets and slept in the car. Top up, by the way. Still a little cold to sleep outside with the top down. Morning would wake them as their brothers came out to do their chores before school. The same old farm. The couple in love got out and greeted the boys. Charlie introduced his new wife to each brother. Then Charlie and Daisy headed up to the house to find the mother cooking breakfast in the kitchen. His father was coming out of the bathroom and hurried to give them both a hug. It seemed to last for days. What a hug. Ma was able to break it up, saying, "Hey, I need love too," as she embraced them both. Charlie told them both how he had taken Daisy with him, and as they helped Uncle Morton in his recovery from cancer treatment, and they waited to be together until after they were married, just like he had taught them. Charlie bragged about how helpful Daisy was in cooking and cleaning and all the other stuff that she did for Uncle Morton, and how they were now married, and it had been 8 months now. Ma was overjoyed, and now to have another woman in the family. She was outnumbered. Ma told Daisy that they would have to have a few girls now to balance out the scale. The ladies laughed and the guys just rolled their eyes. Having 6 boys and her husband around was too many men to handle, she said. They pardoned themselves and went off to the kitchen for a spell. Ma wanted to have some girl time with just Daisy. This gave Charlie a chance to tell his father about what happened to Uncle Morton at his house that caused them to want to leave that big city. Dad understood and said that he was suspicious of something when Uncle Morton suddenly came into money. Dad said, "Let's head out to the barn and see about your brothers, to make sure that they get done what they need to get done." Paul made mention of the card. Charlie told him about finding the envelope with the title and some cash in it for him and Daisy. Good a man needs to get around having a wife now. Coming out on the porch, Charlie looked over the land and seeing the crops. They looked good. He missed seeing that and didn't realize it. His morning view at Uncle Morton's was a dog from the next door neighbor peeing on the flowers in the front lawn, or the garbage men picking up trash and not caring how noisy they were making things that early in the morning. They had to be up working, and they hated their lives, so they didn't care if anybody else heard them or not. Here, it was a joy to get up early. Honest work caused honest pay, Ma would say. Charlie wanted to talk with his parents about building a place down by the creek, but that could wait. For now, he just wanted to breathe it all in. Heading to the barn, he joked with his brothers about how much they had grown, how much Peter needed a haircut, and how much David looked like Pa. Just being around them brought back being a kid again. Pa asked Charlie if he wanted to ride with them to town and drop off the boys at school. Charlie did want to have a chance to talk with his dad about building the home, and this would be perfect. After dropping them off, Paul drove them over to the courthouse. After parking, Paul looked super suspicious at Charlie and said he wanted to have him and Daisy around more. Best way to do that is give them some land that they could build their house on so they could always be near. How did he know? Boy, adults really do know everything. Charlie was speechless at first, then he burst into the plans that he and Daisy had talked about the night that they got back. Paul smiled the whole time, and he seemed proud of his son at that moment. Taking care of his uncle helped Charlie grow up and be different in a way, adding to the learning that he had on the farm. Paul had wanted to give the boys an example of how to be a man. That you can be a man that is firm, but also caring, but most of all, to provide for a family. That was the reason that he had sent him to help Uncle Morton, to learn that sometimes we sacrifice things to help out family. Now Charlie had begun his own family, and anything Paul could do to help, then he would. Giving part of the farm just made sense to him. He would have a son near to help, plus it would give someone that Ma could talk to during the days. Paul knew that one day Charlie would take over the whole farm, but for now, he would deed him off just a plot of land, just so that he could put the land up at the bank to get a loan to build a decent structure. The drive from the courthouse down the street to the only bank in town, which is the Paxton Savings and Loan. Paul did all the talking, and the bank owner sort of helped, while the whole time Charlie thought, I really don't like this guy. Holding the land as collateral, they would have a home-built loan that Charlie would have to pay off in no time. After returning home, Charlie told Daisy that it was time to talk to her family. Dread hit them both, but that was when Ma told them that sometimes we worry when we should just be happy. This was something that they had to face and was going to face it together, and that would make it better. Driving up the road, Charlie remembered that night that they had left, how excited it was to see Daisy waiting on them in the wood line and run away with him. Maybe her dad would be gone somewhere helping someone, and they could just talk to the mom alone and let her break the news to the dad. Nope. Things like that only happen to other people. As they came up the drive, her father was out in the front yard chopping wood. And Charlie's eyes went straight to that axe that the father was swinging. It wouldn't be good to be on the sharp side of that thing. Preacher or not, he's still a father that lost his little girl that had run away with a guy. Charlie and Daisy pulled up to the parents' house with their hearts pounding with anticipation. They had made the decision to break the news about their secret marriage. As they got closer, Charlie and Daisy exchanged nervous glances. The axe-wielding figure before them seemed formidable, and the timing might not be right for them just to reveal their information. They hesitated, unsure how to approach him, if to approach him even at all. Daisy's father continued to chop the wood, focusing on his task. His demeanor was imposing, and it was clear that he was in the midst of a physical exertion, and the thud of the axe against the log seemed to echo their uncertainty. Charlie shook off the image of his head on one of those logs as he burst into two as it busted up. As they approached him, Daisy's father, the preacher, paused his work and looked at them, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and disappointment. "You both have a lot of explaining to do," he said, with a stern and frustrated voice. However, as Charlie and Daisy began to speak, explaining their love and the reason for their marriage, a remarkable transformation came over him. His anger gradually melted away, replaced by a sense of understanding and compassion. He listened intensely to their words. His own heart softened. As a preacher who preaches forgiveness, he couldn't ignore the love and honesty in their voices. After a quiet moment of reflection, he spoke with a new-found gentleness. "I may preach forgiveness, but I should also live it," he admitted in a tone that shifted from the stern to an understanding. "I forgive both of you for running away, and I hope you'll forgive me for my initial reaction." Tears welled up in Daisy's eyes as she embraced her father, feeling the profound sense of relief and reconciliation. Charlie joined them in the hug almost out of relief more than joy. With her father's forgiveness, they were now free to share their news with her mother. Charlie and Daisy, having received Daisy's father's forgiveness, now had to face the daunting task of explaining their secret marriage to her mother. They gathered in the living room, and Daisy's mother's eyes brimmed with a mix of hurt and anger. As Daisy began to speak, her voice quivered with emotion. She explained how deeply she loved Charlie and how they had made the difficult decision to marry secretly. Tears welled up in her eyes as she shared the challenges that they had faced. But instead of the understanding and forgiveness that they'd hoped for, Daisy's mother's expressions hardened. She turned away, and her anger and disappointment was evident. Without a word, she abruptly left the room, retreating to the bathroom and locking the door with a slam. Charlie and Daisy exchanged worried glances, feeling the weight of her mother's rejection. They didn't know how to bridge the gap that had suddenly formed between them. Daisy's father, seeing the pain in both their eyes, stepped forward and had a determined resolve in his mind. He approached the locked bathroom door and spoke through it, his voice filled with love and understanding. He recounted the importance of forgiveness and the need to support their daughter in this challenging time. Slowly, the tension in the room began to ease, and Daisy's mother listened to her husband's words. After a heartfelt conversation, Daisy's mother finally unlocked the bathroom door. Stepping out, her expression softened, her tears welling up in her eyes. She embraced Daisy tightly, realizing their love was genuine and that they needed her support now more than ever. With forgiveness and understanding prevailing, they were reunited as a family once more, ready to face the challenges and the joys that lay ahead. After telling them some things good about Detroit, they told about how all they wanted to do was come back home. The plan to build a house, and that Charlie's family had gifted them a spot for them to build on. That spot was right across from their special tree and would be theirs to do as they wished. Now her father offered to help in any way that he could, but they knew that it would be limited. The house went up with some effort, with all the other chores that had to be done around the farm, adding more to the day that provided the challenge, but having it done would be worth it all. Paul was handy in working in wood, and it seemed like he could do anything. But it was the family building where everyone pitched in. It was their home. Charlie and Daisy's. One of the neatest things was the kitchen table that Pa made out of leftover lumber from the mill. The house was even better than she had even imagined. The sun dipped in the horizon, casting a warm glow over the partially built home. Daisy and Charlie stood hand in hand, surveying the progress that their family had made that day. Laughter and sounds of tools being set aside filled the air. Charlie squeezed Daisy's hands, his eyes sparkling with joy. "Can you believe it, Daisy? Our own home, right here by the creek, near our special tree." Daisy's eyes shimmered with happiness. This spot seemed to glow with supernatural love. "It's a dream come true, Charlie. I never thought I'd have a place to call home, especially one built with so much love." Now the family gathered all around them, smiles lighting up all the faces. Someone handed Charlie and Daisy glasses filled with homemade brewed beverage. "To our new home," Charlie exclaimed, raising his glass. The others echoed, "To your new home." They clinked glasses, and the air filled with cheers and applause. Daisy felt the rush of gratitude and love for the people who had come together to make this moment possible. As the celebration continued, they brought out the guitar, and someone started playing a lively tune. Now, up until now, Ma and Pa's porch was the only place that music could be found at in the evenings. Now the valley was filled with the new and exciting sounds from a new location. This would not be the last time that the farm would have a big display of love and happiness. But for now, Daisy and Charlie began to dance underneath the stars, surrounded by the family and friends. The night carried on with laughter, music, and shared warmth of togetherness. Around them, the special tree seemed to absorb all the joy and the love, becoming a silent witness to the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Pure love would soak into the very roots of that tree. The special tree would have many activities going on, and it would be such a part of their lives. Later on, in the midday sun, it filtered through the leaves, and the special tree casting shadows on the ground. Charlie had his sleeves rolled up and a determined look on his face. He was kneeling beside the car that was parked under the branches of that special tree. The air was filled with soothing sounds of nature, the rustling leaves and the distant babble of the brook. Tools clinked as Charlie worked on the car, his hands moving with practiced grace. Daisy approached with a cool glass of water, smiled at Charlie, and wiped a sweat from his forehead. "Need a break, my love?" Charlie looked up with a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction on his face. "Just a few more tweaks, Daisy, and the old beauty will be back better than ever." Daisy handed him the glass, and he took it gratefully and took a sip. "You're amazing, you know that?" she said to him, with admiration in her voice. Charlie chuckled, glancing at the car. "It's nothing compared to what you and the family have done to make the house a home." As Charlie resumed his work, the family shared a moment of silent appreciation for the love and dedication woven into that small corner of their world. The special tree stood witness to it all, branches reaching out to embrace the scene beneath. God sure did smile on them and help them along the way. As the night fell and the stars emerged one by one, casting a twinkle of light upon the world, a shadow stirred in the depths of Charlie's mind. It was a feeling that he couldn't shake, an intuition and whispering of foreshadowing events and challenges. Daisy turned to Charlie, sensing a shift in his mood. "What's on your mind, my love?" Charlie hesitated, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I can't help but wonder, Daisy. Life has a way of throwing curveballs when everything seems to be going good and true. What if something comes along to test us? Are we ready to face whatever comes our way?" Daisy squeezed his hand reassuringly. "We've faced hardship before, and we've come through it even stronger. We have each other and our family. We have a beautiful home that we've built together. Whatever challenges arise, we will face them together." The night air carried a mixture of hope and uncertainty as Charlie and Daisy stood side by side, gazing into the future. The special tree, a silent witness to that journey, stood tall outside the window, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. Little did they know, the chapter of their story was far from over. The winds of fate held secrets that would test the bonds of love and resilience that they had woven into the fabric of their lives. And so, as the night unfolded, the stars continued to twinkle. The ancestral dance reflects the unpredictability of nature and the journey ahead for Charlie Daisy Wilson. The end.